An afternoon drive into Clarence Town turned to tragedy on Wallarobba Road yesterday afternoon when this Ford Falcon sedan crashed head-on into an oncoming Hyundai. The driver of the smaller car, a 31-year-old mother, was killed. Her two children, a 13-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl, were seriously injured. The two siblings were transferred to John Hunter Hospital. The 13-year-old Dungog High student remains in a critical condition tonight, while his sister's condition has improved. Police say the Falcon was travelling north along the road when its driver attempted to overtake two cars. The southbound Hyundai had nowhere to go. Occupants of the Ford were taken to Maitland and Dungog hospitals. Police are still trying to piece together how the accident happened, but charges are expected to be laid. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
From the start of day two, you got the feeling conditions were going to play a big role in just who made it through to the finals. Candice Falzon faces extra pressure. Voted Australia's sexiest sportswoman, the teenager's ability is also high. She qualified in both the Open and Under-19 Iron Woman deciders. It was further north on Blacksmith's Beach that things really got tough, with surfboat crews served up another big day out. Mona Vale's A crew disappearing in a white water wall before ending the same way. Freshwater, underwater. The Northern Beaches crew's stay title chances sinking with their craft.
Surfboat racing is just like this. Anything can happen. You know, the best crews can get nailed.
Avalon, though, rode the wave of the day to tame the break and set themselves as a team to beat for the crown with finals day tomorrow.
The service is an extension of the successful Maitland After Hours GP clinic. Now it's being rolled out to include Belmont and John Hunter hospitals, the Toronto Polyclinic and the Newcastle Community Health Centre.
Community members don't have to panic anymore about can I receive care. All I have to think about is that if I'm sick, I will be looked after in the best possible place.
The $16.2 million service is a joint initiative of the Hunter Urban Division of GPs, the Commonwealth Government, which allocated $14.6 million to the project, and Hunter Health, which has given $1.2 million in funding and donated its facilities to house the program.
That the GPs have access to pathology testing, to x-rays, and if they need it, to a specialist opinion.
A telephone advice service operated by trained nurses is also included in the project, with recruitment now well underway.
Look, we've committed ourselves to July the 1st. We've said that we have to be ready for winter. That's our commitment to our community for supporting us for so long, and we will be ready by July the 1st.
It's expected the service will help reduce waiting times and take the pressure off emergency department staff and GPs, who are usually stretched to the limit during winter. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Martin Kelly is ranked third in the Commonwealth after winning bronze at the Manchester Games, but he's about to test himself against the world's best in the sports powerhouse of mainland Europe. First up is Poland, then the Italian Open, before linking with the Slovakian team for intensive training, with the British Open to round out his tour in late April.
The Polish national champion, he's a two-time Olympic medalist and three-time world champion, so hopefully I'll meet him later in the rounds rather than early.
The events mark the start of Olympic qualifiers for the Europeans, so Kelly's sure to meet some top-quality opposition. That's just what he's after, as he also begins working towards the same goal.
All the best in Europe will be these two tournaments, and as they strive to get their Olympic spots.
Kelly has learnt to expect the unexpected from his opposition, but just what he's capable of soon became all too clear.
Okay, Marty, so what move is this?
Well, this is a hip throw, Jim.
Do you have a favourite move?
Yep, Jem, this is it.
Moves like that will certainly leave an impact overseas. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Michael Milne was among a group of 4 friends who went to the Rainbow Sands mining site in the school holidays of October 2001. But the 13-year-old died after he was hit by a front-end loader. Wayne Lavender was the driver of that loader, who allegedly pursued the boys into nearby bushland where Michael was killed. In the first day of the trial, Crown Prosecutor Laurie Gray said the accused failed to steer a course which was consistent with safety, failed to keep a proper lookout, and once he entered the bush was travelling at a speed which was unsafe. But the defence argued he was driving at an extremely slow speed of 4 or 5 kilometres an hour. Lavender's co-worker Alan Davis also appeared in court today and said he and Lavender were only pursuing the boys to try and remove them from the site, and the company had a strict policy on trespassing following previous incidents with kids and also vandalism. The trial continues before Judge Ralph Coulihan tomorrow and is expected to last 1 week. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News. For these children, life is slowly moving on, but sadly it will never be the same again without their mother.
Just think the kids are going to grow up without their mother, and that makes me sad all the time, you know.
Just over a month ago, Rita Askoff was killed while she was driving her children to the bus stop. She died just metres away from where their new family home is being built. The Askoffs are living in this shed until the house is finished. But that could take longer than expected. Since the accident, Norm has been forced to give up his job as a plumber to look after his 5 children, who range in age from 8 to 5 months old.
Yeah, they get their times. They get a little bit upset and whatever at night and that, but on a whole they're pretty good.
But the Branxton community is digging deep to help the family finish the home. They've organised raffles and a charity day.
But up here, as soon as you hear of anything like that, your first reaction is, who is it? And being a small community, everyone does get behind it.
Branxton's just a really nice place. It's a close-knit community and people just help one another when they're in need.
The charity day will be held this Sunday at the Branxton Golf Club. Donations are also being welcomed, with the community hoping to raise as much money as possible for the family. Organisers are also looking for tradespeople to help finish the house. To help, call 0402 342 773.
People we don't even know have just been donating things and food and gifts for the kids. It's been really good.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The thigh bone of this Stegosaurus was one of the last pieces to be assembled today by Dr. Li and his team of Chinese paleontologists. They've brought the incredible Chinese dinosaur collection to Newcastle, featuring actual bones unearthed in China.
And I think that most people are used to things being fake now. People aren't used to the real stuff, and this is real dinosaur fossilised bone that has come, and each bit has been put together individually.
When you're a 26-metre long Marmenchosaurus, a slipped disc can be a real pain in the neck. The exhibition opens next week. Meantime, over at the Lovett Gallery at the Regional Library, a collection of images from the beach is being prepared. The professional photographers of the Hunter have pooled their talents, coming up with some unique snaps like this mermaid in the sand at Caves Beach, some cheeky dunes, and this far from typical Iron Man.
You've got those horizontal lines, you've got the colours of the sand and the sea and the sky, the textures of the rocks and the water as it reflects the light.
A Day at the Beach opens on Friday night. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The idea of finding a dumped car in the 212,000-hectare Wadigan State Forest isn't new, but today's operation definitely was. Incorporating not only police but state forests and national park staff and the NRMA, it was hoped the joint approach by interested parties would yield better results, both now and in the future.
I think it's an information exchange, intelligence gathering exercise, someone putting a face to a name as to who to contact in those agencies.
With 15 police on the ground, including 2 on trail bikes, it wasn't long before the first wreck was located. Insurance assessors on hand to go over the 1989 to 91 model Commodore. The operation coincides with the imminent release of an NRMA insurance study, citing burned and dumped vehicles as one of the insurer's biggest claim areas, and something that comes at a cost to the environment and the community. State Forests, for one, considers burned-out cars as the second highest cause of bushfires.
We need as many people as possible to identify offenders and prosecute them if necessary.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Lack of exercise yards, training facilities, just pretty much anything that you could possibly name that could be wrong with the shelter is wrong here.
These tired-looking rooms and run-down hallways might not look like much now, but within a few months the salt spray will be cleared from the windows, revealing million-dollar views from the 3.5-star accommodation. A Sydney-based developer is spending up big to refurbish the hotel, with the ground floor bar set to reopen in 2 weeks' time.
There's still a lot of work. If you look at the ground floor at the moment, it's still like if someone has dropped a bomb, but it's actually coming all together over the next 7 days.
The 1930s Art Deco building was closed late last year after a dispute between the owner and the operator, and the new faces behind the bar eventually want the building fully operational.
The long-term plans is to refurbish the hotel over the next 6 to 9 months and get it fully all operational and be part of not only the accommodation industry in Newcastle, but overall become number one entertainment venues and accommodations venues in town.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Oscar time again, and everyone's revealing their inner film critic.
You guys seen that little stunt? He is sick.
The first video, we were out in Dumont sand dunes jumping. We didn't seem like it had the power, but I was already committed, so I just kept it on. When I got in the air, I came up probably 30 feet, 40 feet shorter than they were jumping with their factory bikes, and they'd been clearing.
The latest full moon has created extreme tide patterns over the last week, with highs exceeding 1.8 metres. While there's nothing unusual about that, it means the lows are quite extreme. In fact, 0.14 of a metre this afternoon. Although it's created navigational hazards for sailboarders and kite surfers, it's exposed a sand spit at the end of Nobby's Beach, opening up a view of the city which up until now has only been seen from the water. At the end of the spit is Big Ben Reef, and at low tide its rock pools combine with the sea floor for a visual spectacular. Making the most of this afternoon's strong nor'easter, wildlife on the reef took the chance to either hang out the washing to dry or to grab an easy meal. So if you're looking to escape the world's current problems for an hour, or simply go for an afternoon stroll somewhere new, it's well worth a look. Providing the weather conditions remain favourable, the forecast tidal lows should mean the stretch of sand will remain for at least the next 2 months. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
It sounds like a jet engine and works on the same principle. The difference is that this micro turbine is fueled by natural gas, produces electricity, and its takeoff capacity is limited to cutting the power bill and greenhouse gas emissions at Newcastle University. The Medical Sciences Building is the first Australian commercial user of the US-developed technology, which will supplement the existing electricity supply and provide a vital emergency backup.
It's also a standby supply if we lose connection to the grid or supply from the grid. It takes the place of a diesel generator, providing uninterruptible power to us for emergencies.
A rooftop launch today marked the arrival of Newcastle's latest green energy initiative. The University, Newcastle Council and the state's Sustainable Energy Development Authority joining forces to get the project off the ground. In addition to electricity, the 600-degree exhaust heat from the turbine will be captured and used for the building's hot water and air conditioning systems, and it's claimed to be more efficient than a conventional power station.
Because we're using the waste heat, as well as using an energy source in the first place, natural gas, which is better in terms of greenhouse than coal, quite a bit better.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It's our third round of the Australian Hockey League at the moment, and we're only sitting on 2 points, so it's pretty important that we have some wins from this weekend.
Bodyboarding seems more like stand-up surfing every day. The drop knee category is a new division of the Australasian Tour, with some of the latest moves crossing over between standing up and lying down. Western Australian Teo Wui was ripping in the choppy surf today. Almost 100 riders took part in this weekend's Newcastle Open, with locals like Nathan Graham from Nelson Bay edging out some of the big names.
Ryan Hardy, who is pretty much unofficially the world's #1 rider, turned up. Unfortunately got knocked out in the third round, but that's the way it goes. We've had guys like Sean Virtue from Western Australia, Bo Day from Sydney, and a whole swag of Australia's best riders here this weekend.
Port Macquarie's Lawrence Maguire launched off the lip but had nowhere to go, while Wui wiped out only to get sucked back over the falls. A glamorous group of spectators looked on as the rarely televised bodyboarding ritual of the flipper race was held on the sand.
They are an underground sort of a crew. You don't get to see them much because they're always sneaking around the corner to some reefs to ride. But we have a very large fraternity here in Newcastle, and they've come along and supported it this weekend.
Two of Newcastle's most convincing wins this season have been against Parramatta, and United was out for a repeat performance today. Tom Willis showed some top form in goal, pulling off this double save, but needed a hand from captain Matt Bingley to keep this one out. Steve Eagleton appeared to twist his knee and was carried off in pain. Then the moment United fans had been waiting for. Robbie Middleby chipped to Joel Griffiths, who used his head to score. But the second half belonged to the Power, with O'Grady getting one through in the 72nd minute. Then another late goal, this time from Zorbas. The full-time score, Parramatta 2, Newcastle 1.
The Cockle Creek smelter, which has been around for more than a century, will close its doors at the end of September. The 360 workers were told about the accelerated closure today.
It's a pretty tough thing for employees when you have to stand before them and tell them they've got 6 months, and you know that they've put a tremendous effort in. But at the end of the day, a business needs to make a profit, and we are such a long way from making a profit, and there's not a clear pathway to that.
Already operating under tight financial constraints, Pasminco says the change in exchange rate and higher than expected capital expenditure are reasons behind the decision. The union representing employees says it will ask the company for an increase in redundancy packages and says it's disappointed workers will now have just 6 months to reskill.
We really need to concentrate all of our efforts on making sure that they're going to get some employment to be able to retire with some dignity.
The accelerated closure of Pasminco will also have severe economic repercussions throughout Lake Macquarie, with the smelter pouring millions of dollars into the economy each year.
There's generations of people that have worked there. They all seem to live in reasonably close proximity to the smelter, and it's it's 106-year-old. So,
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News. While they may not know the politics surrounding the war in Iraq, most children are aware that it's being fought, and many may feel threatened by it. Experts say one of the reasons they're afraid is because they confuse geographical distances.
The fact that it's thousands of kilometres away means nothing. The fact is they know that there's a lot of people fighting and that they know that Australians are involved.
But schools like this one at Wallsend South near Newcastle are taking a proactive approach, equipping parents with strategies to help explain the war. Professor Ken Nunn says it's important for parents to explain they can't stop the war, but they can influence the effect it has in their homes.
One of the really important things is to talk to the kids about whether the conflict is a long way away or not, whether it's dangerous to them as a family, whether there's any harm, whether people in the family will have to leave home to go to fight the war.
Meanwhile, while the debate continues about the level of war images available, Professor Ken Nunn says it's important the public continues to take it seriously.
I think that's the biggest threat we have, that people will become desensitised to the horror of aggression. And what we want is for people still to be shocked. We want kids still to be appalled if they see someone hurt.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The dairy industry is currently in the midst of its prickliest time. While Hunter farmers are holding on in a green drought, their financial returns remain stuck in a much longer and harsher drought, which is the result of their industry being opened up to national competition. Today, 100 producers met in Singleton to work out what is needed for them to have a future.
Possibilities of trying to improve our income, trying to get back more market balance into our industry, because there's farmers out there and they're really hurting at the moment and they need help.
As these farmers anxiously await the price they'll be paid in the next financial year, industry players who have increased their profit from deregulation are being told to help their suppliers.
It's time they started to reinvest and get some money back into their supply base, or else they won't have supply.
The overwhelming call from the Singleton meeting is for the federal government to consider reinstating market control and to hold a royal commission into the widening gap between the price farmers are paid and that charged by supermarkets for milk. Federal and state members of Parliament are now the focus of dairy farmer attention. The farmers have warned the MPs they won't be taking no for an answer after today voting unanimously to fight for their survival. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Well, the first two rounds have produced a very unique brand of football, very similar to what the Super League meant when they said they wanted State of Origin football every week. Now, of course, that didn't happen back then, but it's happening now, and the intensity and the closeness of the score lines prove that. Now, as you can see here in last week's scores, every game except one was a thrilling and close encounter, which again is reflected in the for and against for all of the teams. Now, this style of football is happening because the rules of our game are fractionally in favour of the defensive team. We're finding it easier to grab ascendancy and control of the game. But at the same time, we're seeing some outstanding attacking efforts. I think it's a great mix. Now, speaking of attacking players, the Storm have had an amazing start to the season, winning both of their games. At the same time, they've unearthed two young guns, Billy Slater and Semi Tadulala. Now, they're two of the most exciting players in the NRL at the moment. They're busting tackles, making line breaks, and they're amongst the top try scorers at the moment as well. They've only played two first-grade games and they're great players to look out for. Now on to round three, the Knights. They won't be resting tonight with their rookie pack taking on the Parramatta Eels. Only 22.5 years of age is the average age of the Knights forwards, but I'm tipping the Knights to win. Now in Saturday's games, I've gone for the Raiders, Warriors and the Bulldogs. On Sunday, I've tipped the Roosters over the Panthers. Broncos to win at home against the Sharks, who have had the bye. And the Rabbitohs, well, they're going to get their first win of the season, I think. Good luck for your tips. Back to you, Rabs.
It was small but clean for today's round of 64 in the Protein Series, and while Lynch entered the water as one of the favourites, he was outclassed in the surf by Woolgoolga's James Aythorne and Currumbin's Ryan Hipwood.
Didn't seem to get the right waves, and ball probably wasn't going the way I wanted it to go in these smaller waves, but it's the worst I've gone all year, and I'm really disappointed to do it at home.
Travis has another chance to impress in next week's MR Pro. Also impressive today was Daniel Ross from Maclean and Queenslander Dean Brady, who busted this barrel roll, but it wasn't enough to get him through. And on the shore, as always, a true legend of Surffest. For 17 years, Joyce McCarter has been greeting competitors as they come off the sand and hanging up their competition vests. No matter where in the world they're from, Joyce makes everyone feel at home.
If they lose, I say, oh, well, you're as good a surfer as me, but you'll get better.
Among her favourites, former world champ Mark Ocalupo.
I've known him since he was about 10 and a half. And Luke Egan since he was born. Yeah, they're like my family, really, and the girls. Yeah, I love them very dearly. I'm very fond of them. And they all come to see if I'm all right.
She always consoles the ones that are lost, and she always congratulates the ones. I mean, she finds the perfect word. The legends of the sport, from Ockie, Tom Curran, Carol, everyone knows her and has known her since a kid. That just speaks itself. You know, the respect for Joyce is immense.
We had a fantastic time, and it's opened our eyes to this whole area, being probably right through Australia but never been to Newcastle. And so we're going to go back and tell everybody about it.
With the opportunity to rid themselves of unwanted household chemicals, Port Stephens residents made their way, any way they could, to the Salamander Bay Waste Transfer Station. A joint venture between Resource New South Wales and local councils is allowing residents across the region to drop off chemicals, batteries and gas bottles for free in the coming weeks. Collectors are finding that people are mostly bringing in paints, oils and solvents, chemicals that are easily disposed of or recycled, but sometimes they still have to deal with chemicals from another era.
There were some surprises. I think we were surprised by a couple of brand new packets of DDT we got yesterday at Cessnock, you know. We would have hoped that all that would be gone by now, but we've still got some yesterday.
Chemical Clean-Out Day began in Cessnock yesterday. Other venues will follow. Next weekend it's Murrurundi and Muswellbrook. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Under the changes, land within 1 kilometre of the coastline will come under state government development control. It's a move designed to protect delicate environments. But in Newcastle's case, the so-called coastal zone takes in much more than natural systems. It actually includes a large section of the CBD.
Only the CBD, that's the major area that's affected, and the Council has extensive policies to deal with development in those areas, so it's not quite sure how they'll will relate to the new coastal package.
Council stands to lose not only the power to rule on development applications within the coastal zone, but also the valuable income they generate, around $700,000 a year.
The main concern that we have is that areas like Newcastle and Wollongong in particular are treated differently to Sydney. In the case of Sydney, Sydney Harbour and Port Botany are exempt, and also there's significant parts of the coastal suburbs which are also exempt from the policy.
Council planners are seeking to have parts of Newcastle also made exempt from the new rules. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. On the road in memory of the Barley Walk, not just about raising money, it's about healing.
It's an 88-day walk, so that symbolises a day for every Australian life that was lost there.
It's a personal crusade for Stuart Main, who lost his close cousin Belinda Allen in the Bali blasts.
She's 23-year-old. I mean, she's only just 23 by a week, and she saved all year to go on holiday to Bali with her friends. She was in the Surrey Club for 15 minutes.
Belinda's story inspired the epic journey, and together with his best mate Howard Batty, Stuart left home on the Gold Coast at the beginning of the month, picking up supporters along the way, including a generous donor today.
He warmed to our cause and asked if he could walk with us, and he gave us $1,000 too, and you get people like that all the time.
Already, the Rebuild Bali appeal has raised more than $500,000, the walkers hoping to reach the $1 million mark before they reach Melbourne by the end of May. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
The trial followed an early morning incident at Hamilton's Kent Hotel on November 9, 2001. 21-year-old Ian Eggins suffered serious facial injuries after a schooner glass was thrown at him as he tried to remove his cousin from an argument with another man inside the pub. Off-duty constable Brett Teasdale was later arrested and charged, but has pleaded not guilty to maliciously inflicting grievous bodily harm on Mr Eggins. Despite the hotel being crowded at the time of the incident, the Crown case relies on the evidence of just one witness. Dane Foster identified Constable Teasdale from having grown up in the Valentine area and because the officer had arrested him for drink driving. In his closing address, prosecutor John Pickering told the court the Crown had proved its case through the evidence of Dane Foster. But defence counsel Nick Moyer argued that despite efforts by the victim's family and friends to locate the alleged attacker outside the hotel after the incident, no one had approached Brett Teasdale. In summing up, Judge Ralph Coulahan told jurors they must be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr Foster was an honest and accurate witness before they could find Brett Teasdale guilty. The jury deliberated for 3 hours this afternoon and will resume considering its verdict tomorrow morning. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Premier Bob Carr was briefed today by his Regional Land Management Corporation, established by the government just a month ago to forge a future for Newcastle's industrial sites. It'll manage nearly 2,500 hectares of local land, including the former BHP site. The vision for a multi-purpose terminal a key aim.
What we've got to make sure is that if they do get a tenant for it, that we have enough land there to support the industries that go with it, and that could be very, very lucrative.
Expressions of interest for operating the terminal have already been received, and while the government says the response was encouraging, there's still more work to be done.
I can't force investors at the point of obeying it, but we can set up the place so that they see the advantages of going with Newcastle.
Tenders for operating the terminal closed a month ago, and while their details remain confidential, one major player has today publicly declared its interest in having a significant stake in the development. Korean shipping company Pan Ocean has appointed a local real estate agent to help broker the deal. A regular visitor to Newcastle, the company is keen for a more permanent presence.
They'd be looking at very least subleasing a terminal or part of the terminal from whoever the successful purchaser or tenderer is.
It's hoped a successful terminal operator will be announced within months. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
That was my portfolio, so I knew earlier.
And how does that sit with you?
It sits very well with me, considering that we have in the Cessnock electorate probably the most mines and issues related to mining in my community.
For first-time parents Anthony Russell and Emma Eitman, the issue of circumcision has been a major talking point since the birth of little Jacob.
You talk to people about it and everyone's got their own opinions and people get upset about it and think that you're doing the wrong thing.
They've decided they do want Jacob circumcised, but he won't be able to undergo the procedure in a local public hospital, at least until he's 6 months old. In line with recommendations from the Royal Australasian College of Physicians, Hunter Health has ceased circumcision for newborns.
What we have moved quickly to stop is routine circumcision. Now we will do it if there's a good reason where the benefit will outweigh the harm.
Hunter Health says it will consider individual cases where it's needed for medical reasons, but in the majority of cases, it says, circumcision is performed for cultural or social reasons, and there are real risks to the baby.
Like risks of infection or bleeding, and certainly they suffer pain.
Hunter Health says parents should seek advice from their doctor if they're concerned about the issue. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. It's a site steeped in history, and that's part of the problem. The buildings which give James Fletcher Hospital its heritage appeal also limit its use, and Hunter Health says the facility no longer serves its needs. It wants to move mental health services to the Mater Hospital, in keeping with modern trends to co-locate care.
Being on the site of an acute general hospital helps remove the stigma from mental health. It means mental health patients can access medical consultation.
The Health Department is yet to approve the plan, but already there are strong community concerns about what will happen to the James Fletcher's site. A local residents group is lobbying for the historic site to be kept in public ownership, and the state government has pledged not to sell. But just what future use it sees for the grounds and buildings remains unclear.
I don't think it's under threat from being built on with high-rise buildings or anything like that. I really believe that we can come up with a good heritage solution.
Newcastle Council has been briefed on the plan and says it'll be part of future discussions, but the question of who'll foot the bill for any redevelopment remains a sticking point.
My question is if it stays in public hands, who funds the refurbishment? What do they get used for?
There's still plenty of time for debate. The move isn't scheduled to take place until 2008. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. It's a common and popular treatment for asthmatics. But Hunter medical researchers have found most sufferers are using their preventer puffers too much.
Most of the benefit comes from very low doses. And as you increase the dose, you don't get much benefit, but you start to get a lot of side effects.
Side effects from the steroid medication can range from a sore throat to hoarseness to more serious complications. The findings of the HMRI study have just been published, with a clear message to doctors to dramatically cut back on the doses they prescribe.
And we found that, 1 to 2 puffs of the higher strength medicine was enough, whereas it's common for people to be on 4 to 6 puffs, for example.
The Hunter region has one of the highest incidences of asthma in the world, and this kind of research is at the forefront of HMRI's work. It's set to expand further, with a $300,000 donation pledged today by Port Waratah Coal Services to establish a fellowship for a new medical researcher. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.